My name is Claire Morgan, and this is not the kind of story I ever dreamed I'd be telling about myself. I was raised in a small town in Oregon, a place where honesty traveled faster than the wind and reputations took years to stitch but only a moment to shred. My family believed in the kind of love that outlives storms, the kind of love written in vows and cemented in sacrifice. I grew up clinging tightly to that ideal. And yet, here I was only months ago, learning that the man who thought himself safe in my heart was merely a stepping stone I used to climb into a brighter room. Yes, I admitted it, I committed the cruelest betrayal, not out of hatred, but out of ambition, fear, and the inexhaustible hunger to belong to a world I felt was slipping just beyond my reach. I work really hard to make videos for you all, so please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Also, make sure to tell me your name and where you are watching this story from. Let's start the story. But the thing about betrayal is this, it doesn't end the story. Once you break someone else's trust, you release a storm you cannot control, and when it comes back around, you might not recognize the destruction it leaves in its wake. This is the story of how I lost the man who loved me, how I invited another into my life under false pretenses, and how the choices I made led me down a road that still haunts me every night. A road paved with ambition, regret, revenge, and a shattered mirror of who I thought I was. I was 28 when I met Andrew. He was quiet, thoughtful, almost invisible at first glance, but once you caught his eyes, you saw the universe in them. Andrew wasn't the richest man or the sharpest dresser, but he believed in me more than I believed in myself. We met at a bookstore cafe in Portland. I'd been buried in a collection of feminist essays, sipping burnt coffee, when he leaned across my table and said, "Excuse me, I think you dropped this." He held out a bookmark, sturdy and floral, not mine, but I pretended it was. That was Andrew, always giving you something to hold, something you didn't even realize you needed. Within weeks, we were inseparable. Within a year, he proposed on the banks of the Columbia River, under a scarlet autumn sky, and I said yes with a certainty that surprised even me. Our engagement should have been the happiest time of my life. But that was also the time my career dreams began sharpening their claws. When the letter arrived, it felt like fate tied with a gold ribbon. A private invitation to an exclusive networking gala in New York City, organized by one of the most influential women in finance. I worked in strategy consulting, stuck between failed promotions and nights of endless exhaustion. My chance to rise had come. But the invitation had an unspoken rule, only those with the right company would matter. In those circles, appearing desirable was not about what you knew but who you loved. A successful fiancé, a husband-to-be, was not just a companion, he was a statement. Andrew, soft-spoken and modest, wasn't the statement I thought they wanted. He was kind, dependable, but not polished. He didn't wear tailored suits, he didn't talk deal flows and valuations, and his resume wasn't gilded with Ivy League polish. On the night of the gala, I told him not to come. I said I wanted him to rest, that he wouldn't enjoy the glittering room filled with power brokers. He looked at me with quiet concern, he always suspected when I wasn't being honest, but he nodded, kissed my hand, and said, "Do what you need to, Claire. I'll be here when you come back." I didn't know those words would haunt me. At the gala, Manhattan lights pressed against the glass walls like liquid fire. Everyone shimmered. Diamonds clinked against champagne flutes, laughter rang like chimes. It was the kind of room where fortunes turned with a smile, where reputations were currency. And standing by my side was not Andrew. It was Nathaniel Reed. Nathaniel was everything Andrew was not: sleek, dangerous, effortlessly charismatic, a rising associate at a powerful firm. He slipped into the role of my fiancé with eerie perfection. I introduced him as my future husband, and no one questioned it. They saw us as flawless, enviable. My career suddenly had fuel, spark, momentum. But the lie didn't end that night. One introduction led to another, and soon, Nathaniel became my regular partner at such events. Each time, I left Andrew at home with another excuse. Each time, my chest grew heavier. And yet, ambition whispered, keep going. What I hadn't counted on was Andrew's quiet watchfulness. He wasn't loud or confrontational, but he saw. One evening, after another glittering event, I returned home to find him waiting in the living room. His eyes weren't blazing with fury, they were heavy with hurt. On the coffee table lay a glossy magazine from the gala, where Nathaniel and I had been photographed together. The caption read, Rising Consultant Claire Morgan and her future husband, Nathaniel Reed. I froze. My excuses shattered before I could form them. Andrew just looked at me, then said, When did I stop being enough for you, Claire? I wanted to answer, but my throat locked. When he left that night, the silence was louder than any scream. That was the moment my betrayal became real. The night Andrew left, he did not slam the door, nor did he shout as a lesser man might have. The final sound I heard was the click of the latch, soft and final, like the punctuation at the end of a sentence you never wanted to write. The apartment felt monstrous in that silence. Every corner seemed to judge me, the photographs of us smiling on hiking trails, the mug he'd given me on our last anniversary, even the engagement ring on my finger. It weighed heavier than gold, like a shackle of my own making. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he'd cool down, that love we'd built over years was stronger than one terrible night. But deep down, I knew better. Betrayal once unveiled is not easily folded back into loyalty. For days, I heard nothing. No texts. No calls. Just absence, stretching into something unbearable. I filled the void with work, conferences, late nights with Nathaniel, though every time I laughed at his jokes, I could still see Andrew's face, quiet and broken, asking, when did I stop being enough? I didn't realize absence can turn into fire under the right heart. Andrew was not gone. He was simply waiting, watching, and changing. They say heartbreak makes people reckless. That wasn't true for Andrew. Heartbreak made him disciplined. While I was climbing through glass towers of ambition, Andrew disappeared into shadows I never thought he could inhabit. He quit his job at the local firm. Friends whispered that they saw him in New York, dressed sharper, speaking less, but appearing with people who carried an aura of calculated ruthlessness. I didn't know then that Andrew had discovered something more powerful than love, the taste of revenge, sharpened through humiliation. He started attending the same circles I entered with Nathaniel, finance parties, charity galas, exclusive launch dinners. At first, he stayed at a distance, as though merely observing. But soon, his presence was undeniable. The quiet man from Portland now wore confidence like armor. His suits were tailored, his voice brimmed with authority. He was unrecognizable. The cruelest part? Everyone loved him. The very circles I had thought too bright for him embraced him fully. As though the man I once thought not enough was, in fact, more than I could ever match. At a winter gala in Manhattan, I saw him again for the first time since that night. He was standing near the bar, talking effortlessly with a silver-haired investor. I froze, champagne glass trembling in my hand, while Nathaniel pressed a palm to my back. Andrew turned his eyes on me, cool and sharp. And then, he smiled. But it was not the smile I knew, a smile that once carried warmth and gentleness. This was a colder thing, edged and deliberate. When he approached, the world slowed. Claire, he said, his voice steady. You're looking ambitious. His tone was a knife dressed as silk. Nathaniel extended a hand, introducing himself with charm. Andrew shook it calmly, as though the man who had stolen his title was nothing more than an acquaintance. But when Andrew's gaze found me again, I understood something chilling. He was not here to win me back. He was here to unmake me. Over the next few months, it was as though Andrew knew every step before I took it. Business opportunities one pursued slipped away, mysteriously redirected to others. Clients I once courted canceled deals last minute. Sponsorships evaporated. Meanwhile, Andrew's own reputation blossomed. He entered projects with impossible precision, winning accounts I had dreamed of. His name began appearing in headlines, the rising strategist with the golden touch. Each success of his seemed like a mirror opposite of my failure. And though he never spoke of vengeance outright, the pattern was undeniable. I had crushed his trust, now he was dismantling the very identity I had sought so desperately to create. Nathaniel grew frustrated, but his frustration fell on me. "It's like your ex knows every move before we make it," he snapped one night. "Did you spill our Bluecrest proposal to him?" "No," I shot back, but even I wondered sometimes. Was Andrew anticipating, or was he simply smarter than I ever gave him credit for? The answer was darker. He had been watching me long before I betrayed him. He knew how I thought, how I schemed, and now he sharpened my own ambition into the poison I had poured. One spring evening, I found myself alone on a hotel balcony after yet another event where Andrew appeared untouchable. I clutched my glass and tried to steady myself against the Manhattan skyline. Nathaniel had already slipped away to gamble in some side room, leaving me stranded in my own bitterness. And then Andrew stepped outside, standing only a few feet away. "Comfortable?" he asked softly, as though we were still the couple who used to share rooftop views over Portland. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. My voice broke against the night. "You could have just left me." He turned, eyes calm yet merciless. "Because you didn't just leave me, Claire. You erased me. You stood in a golden room and declared that someone else was your future. And now, I'll make sure you understand what it feels like to be invisible." For a moment, I saw the man I once loved, buried beneath that fury. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the stranger he had become. When he walked away, I realized the horrifying truth: this was no longer about ambition or betrayal. This was a war, and I was already losing. Nathaniel Reed, the man I had so confidently introduced as my fiancé, was never built for permanence. His charisma dazzled under chandeliers and his suits were pressed to perfection, but beneath the polish lurked cracks, impatience, vanity, and a hunger for quick victories. He had once seemed like an opportunity, but partnerships built on deceit rarely survive pressure. And Andrew was applying pressure with surgical precision. As Andrew's star rose in business circles, Nathaniel began to lose ground. Deals Nathaniel courted slipped away not just to Andrew, but also to others Andrew quietly supported. Names were whispered in corridors, suggesting Nathaniel wasn't as brilliant as his shine suggested. At first, Nathaniel blamed chance. Then he blamed colleagues. But soon enough, the blame turned inward, toward me. "You pulled me into this, Claire," he seethed one night after another rejection. "If it weren't for you parading me as your fiancé, I wouldn't be in his crosshairs. You used me." The accusation burned because it was true. I had used him, just as I had used Andrew. Except now, the man I was using was slipping away, leaving me to face Andrew's shadow alone. Whispers spread faster in Manhattan than wildfire in a dry forest. People no longer introduced me as the strategist with potential. They began introducing me softly, cautiously, as if my reputation were a sinking ship no one wanted to be tethered to. I tried to claw back control. I reached out to investors directly, offered new pitches, even tried to reframe my projects, but every door closed before I could step inside. Behind each closed door, I could feel Andrew's fingerprint. One night, in despair, I confronted him outside a gala he was leaving. I caught his sleeve, pulling him back. "Enough, Andrew," I hissed. "You've made your point. I hurt you, I betrayed you, but what you're doing now? This is cruelty. He looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, his voice fell like frost. Cruelty is standing beside a man who would burn the world for you, and telling the world he is nothing. I am not being cruel, Claire. I am simply giving you what you gave me. Then he left, his silence heavier than any insult. By summer, Nathaniel was unraveling. His losses mounted, his nights were spent drowning in expensive liquor, his charm worn thin. Soon, whispers about his reckless spending, mishandled accounts, and insatiable greed spread. And then it happened, a scandal broke. One of the firms he'd worked with accused him of insider manipulation. His reputation collapsed overnight. The very investors who once fawned over him cast him aside as though he never existed. For a brief, terrible moment, I thought Andrew had engineered it all. But the truth was worse, Andrew hadn't needed to. Nathaniel imploded on his own. He had always been building on sand, I had simply chosen him because the glow was brighter than Andrew's steady flame. After the scandal, Nathaniel disappeared from my life without even a goodbye. One morning, his apartment was vacant. His number disconnected. He was gone, like ash on the wind. And I was left completely alone. Loneliness has a way of magnifying regrets. It paints every memory with sharp edges. I began replaying Andrew's proposal by the Columbia River, the nights of laughter, the way he used to leave handwritten notes in my coffee mug. It wasn't just love I had lost, it was the version of myself that had been gentler, honest, human. The woman I had become, standing amidst New York's jeweled towers, was hollow, built on facades that cracked too easily. I tried to apologize. I wrote Andrew letters, called his office, even showed up at events just to beg for a conversation. Each attempt failed. He never shouted, never publicly humiliated me. He simply looked through me as though I didn't exist. His silence was the purest revenge. Months passed. My career was in ruins, my circle of allies gone. One night in late autumn, I stumbled into a small jazz bar in Brooklyn. I sat with a half-empty glass, trying to quiet the noise in my head. And then I heard it, the soft murmur of his voice. Andrew was there, sitting at a corner table, surrounded by colleagues, laughing with ease. He looked alive in a way I had never seen before, as though betrayal had not broken him but forged him into something unshakable. I wanted to leave, but something kept me rooted. When his companions left briefly, I seized the moment. I walked to his table, heart pounding. "Andrew," I said quietly. For the first time in months, he looked at me, not past me, not through me. At me. His expression softened, if only slightly. "What do you want, Claire?" he asked. I hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know anymore. Maybe forgiveness." He studied me for a long while. Then he leaned back, the faintest sigh escaping his lips. "Claire," he said, "forgiveness is not something you ask for once. It's something you prove, day after day. But I don't think you're asking for forgiveness. You're asking to be seen again. And the cruelest truth? I no longer see you." And with that, he gathered his coat and left me in the dim glow of the bar, as invisible as he had once been to me. After that night at the jazz bar, I unraveled. My network was gone, my career shattered, and my once carefully spun web of connections had dissolved into whispers and avoidance. I tried to pick up the scraps of my professional life, but nobody would touch me. Unreliable. Disloyal. Doesn't know who she is without someone standing next to her. Those words followed me like shadows. Manhattan, once a place I thought would crown me, had become my cage. I moved out of my high-rise apartment, unable to afford it anymore, and landed in a modest one-bedroom in Queens. Nights were long and heavy. I would sit by the window, staring at the city lights, wondering if they belonged to a world I'd never touch again. The hardest part was seeing Andrew's face everywhere, on business magazines, financial interviews, quoted as an industry leader. Newspapers called him a visionary, a strategist with ruthless precision. The same man I had once hidden away because I thought he wasn't good enough. He wasn't just good enough. He was extraordinary. And I had been too blind to see it. One evening, in a surge of recklessness, I showed up at one of his speaking events. A crowded auditorium, packed with young graduates and industry leaders eager to hear Andrew talk about resilience and strategy. I sat in the second row, my heart hammering. He spoke with calm authority, every word laced with clarity and confidence. The audience hung on to him, soaking in his story about failure, reinvention, and discipline. He never mentioned my name, but every sentence about betrayal and rebuilding struck like an arrow. Afterward, I waited in the lobby. When he emerged, surrounded by admirers, I caught his eyes. For a moment, I thought I saw something soften, recognition, maybe even sorrow. But then he looked away, engaging with someone else, his stride unbroken. He hadn't ignored me to cause pain. He simply no longer considered me a part of his story. I was, at last, irrelevant. For months after, I lived in the quiet ruins of my own ambition. At first, I hated Andrew for what he'd done, for dismantling me piece by piece. But, with time, I realized something far deeper and uglier. Andrew hadn't destroyed me. I had done that myself. I betrayed love for ambition. I traded a steady heart for the illusion of status. And when the facade crumbled, all that remained was the hollow truth of who I was. One night, I sat with my journal, and for the first time in years, I wrote honestly. I wanted to be seen by the world, but I failed to see the one man who truly knew me. And now, the world sees me exactly as I am, empty. Months later, an envelope arrived at my Queens apartment. No name on the front, just my address typed neatly. Inside was a single piece of paper. No letter. No explanation. Just a ticket, an admission to an exclusive consulting conference in Chicago. It was Andrew's world now, and this was clearly his doing. Was it a gesture of pity? Or was it one last chance, a reminder that no matter how far I fell, he still chose not to erase me completely? I'll never know. I booked the ticket, but the night before the flight, I tore it into pieces. Because I finally understood, my story with Andrew was no longer alive. To step into his orbit again would not redeem me. It would only prolong the shadow of my disappearance. The only redemption that mattered now was facing myself. Years have passed since those days. I live quietly now, teaching part-time at a small college in upstate New York, earning just enough to rent a modest house and keep the lights on. My students see me as articulate, wise, but they don't know the ruins beneath the surface. I sometimes pass Andrew's name in headlines or read his quotes in journals. He is married now, to someone who looks radiant and kind. They live the life I could have had I chosen loyalty over ambition, sincerity over status. Do I regret it? Every day. But regret is not a currency you can trade. It is only a mirror, one that never lets you look away. Some nights, I still dream of him on the banks of the Columbia River, holding out a ring under that scarlet autumn sky. And in the dream, when I whisper yes, I don't let ambition speak louder than love. But then the dream slips away, and I wake to the cold silence of my small room. This is my truth: betrayal doesn't end a relationship. It ends the person you used to be. And in my hunger for a brighter world, I extinguished my own light.